Well, good morning, friends. It's a beautiful Tuesday. The sun is finally out, and I'm enjoying a little bit of coffee. The park, which is pretty quiet. I don't see any children here. I see maybe one man meditating. Um, so, a few thoughts coming across my mind this morning. Besides my immediate needs, which I currently don't really have any food I can eat. I have some rice, but the problem is the challenge is with that is I only have a little bit of propane left. Maybe not even enough to do a whole thing of rice, and I can't really live off of rice. Like, it's not, just a couple hours later I crash. I'm a protein, high fat diet, O negative, you know. So, and I still only have $2.03 in my account and about $1 and change I found as I cleaned out my van yesterday. So I'm really not entirely sure how I'm going to make this work, but I'm figuring it out. Or I'll fast for a little bit. Expected funds from the generous donor. Thank you very much. I respect anonymity. My tongue's not working. I respect anyone's desire to remain anonymous, or if they, in that GoFundMe, want to put their names out there, I will thank them personally on here. I think that's a good way to work that. Say otherwise if you want it otherwise, but my friend's amazing. I'm not going to go into detail, but thank you. And but expected funds won't get here till maybe June 1st. And I'm like, whoa, okay. We'll see how this works. I've never entirely fasted that long. But the good thing is there's a lot of resources in Eugene for people in desperate situations, and I just got to go figure stuff out. And it's walkable, so even though I'm kind of currently without fuel, like I don't know how much fuel I have, is a question mark due to my broken gauge that I'm unable to fix unless I found a good place. I don't know. I guess it's empty now. I mean, I could probably drop it. I couldn't drop it when it was like filled. That's just too much weight. Maybe with jacks. I don't know. I've never done this kind of thing before with a fuel tank. I've worked on vehicles and stuff, but I have to find a good place to do that. And the city, since I don't have enough fuel to get out of the city. So again, like networking, knowing people can really help. If there's anyone in the Eugene area that wants to help me out in the slightest bit, even if it's just a place for me to wash dishes, that'd be awesome. And I don't really consider this like begging, because what I'm doing currently is having to figure out how to network with people. I have skills and knowledge and resources that I have to offer, and a greater network as well. So it just makes sense, to help each other out. And when you're in Babylon and you're reliant on the exchange of money as your way of interacting with people, and you're always putting a money label on whatever it is that you do, and you think, well, I'm worth more because the amount of money I make, or that person's worth less because they don't have any money. And you value your time as more than their time, or your efforts is more than their efforts, and it leads to all kinds of inequity, right? So, kind of going off topic here, but that's my current situation. What I wanted to talk about this morning is a little bit more of a things I've talked about in many of my posts and reflected on for many years. And this goes with understanding your own sovereignty, and then understanding, of course, what the slave system is. And then you begin to question, like, where does authority, and what is authority? And do we actually have correct beliefs and understanding about what authority is? So we live in a world where the premise is this, that people a long time ago wrote some stuff down on paper and put their signatures on it, they put their names on that piece of paper. They spelled their names on that piece of paper, or a lot of times it wasn't paper, but paper doesn't last very long. Most of the books in existence right now are going to be just like gone because they're printed on acid paper that is acidic and degrades. But back in the day, they did have better paper and papyrus, but they actually wrote a lot of stuff down on animal skins, which is what the United States Constitution is written on, inked on, right? And people write stuff and they put their signature on it. And then, of course, there's some symbols and other stuff and words and language. Language is, we speak our existence into reality, like our internal existence of how we see and how our mental understanding is what manifests in our reality, and language is a huge part of that. I mean, I have seen the sub part of that, right? The pre-language and like. So I'm not saying that words are the only thing that create. Emotions can be extremely powerful, and thoughts that are like without even words, but for the most part, language is how we define our reality. And the masters of language can, of course, manipulate you into a trance, okay, through the use of language. And so the premise of everything, from like even the Magna Carta, is that certain fundamental laws, I forget a little bit of the history about naval stuff, but I'd have to look back on that and refresh my memory. But for the most part, there's only been a little bit of a foundational laws built on each other. The principles that were laid out in the U.S. Constitution and how the preamble and everything, and how it goes on to say these are what we know to be like inalienable rights of mankind, humankind, and it declares a bunch of what those of us that recognize ourselves as sovereign understand is, yes, this is just the truth, what we would call natural law, essentially. Law that doesn't need to be written down. And that's what I'm coming around to. So, this is a world that is based upon a premise that the will of people long dead ago that put their ink, and who knows, maybe somebody did add a drop of blood or something, like, who knows, but symbolically they laid down on skin the flesh of an animal, a lamb I think, and they created a spell. They created a work, and most of those framers were Freemasons. And it was for, a much larger reason, and you see that as you study the colonization and how these towns formed and who planned them and everything. I mean, there was an order going on to this whole madness that became this total madness for sure. I think it's important to understand size and comparison, because in history we read about these events in these cities, and we think of cities and city walls, and we take our modern preconceptions about what we know about city and the density and how big they are, and we imagine that the cities of old were the same. They're much smaller. Like, the biggest cities in Greece was like 30,000 people, okay? And that is what we would consider a small town. That's like basically the city of Ashland. The number of people in Ashland that represented, an entire culture in our minds. But the size in comparison is really important to understand. This is like the difference between having a couple chickens roaming around your yard and an industrial chicken slaughterhouse, like where 1 million chickens live in one large freaking room, and they just periodically cull them. That's how they deal with it. They kill off all the males first. They don't tell you that when you get packaged chicken, processed chicken, what kind of chicken you're eating. And then the females, of course, are quickly given a bunch of hormones and stuff, and just a bunch of stuff, gross, right? The difference between the sizes is important to understand, and the size of this world and the unnaturalness of this. This isn't natural. Whoever thinks that we can fit another 10 billion people on this planet or something is crazy, right? Like, this is already too highly dense of humans, right? And just go to other parts of the world and you'll see that far more. I live in what is considered sparse, and I still see it. This town I'm living in currently is 110 or something thousand, so probably like all of Greece combined. I don't know, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but my point is that a few individuals back then had this massive magnified disproportional effect on this current crop of humans, and it's really, you gotta really think about it, put yourself there and understand it, okay? And so when we're talking about like Jerusalem, which I don't remember the numbers either, 50,000, I mean, it's post-Roman, I mean, this is during the Roman times, so it's grown, you know. I don't remember how big Rome was, a few 100,000 maybe. It was pretty big. But it also dispersed, so I don't know. I would have to look at history books again. But the point is that since fossil fuels, antibiotics, fertilizers, modern irrigation, electricity, we have massively exploded in size, but we're still culturally looking at these time periods where their worlds were very much smaller in terms of amount of people, and in terms of great people, in terms of the amount of knowledge and access to information, you know, like, it's very different. I've done what few people have done, and not just being a generalist and exploring all facets of humanity and this world and existence, like, and I've left out some things, I know, music for sure, but like really going and diving deep into subjects that other people, they just barely touch, and you know, and I, whether or not it's comprehension or, you know, my mind is really broad. Like, I can correlate things. Most people aren't generalists; they're specialists, and that's what this, you know, civilization has done eugenically. It wasn't natural selection; it was forced selection based upon docility and obedience to a slave class. So you're rewarded, and of course, typically, what would happen during conquest is that the most strong males would be eliminated, including the children males, so that there wasn't competition. You can call that sociobiology. You know, there's a lot of ways you could look at that. But the Spaniards definitely did that. And I'm sure that because they also knew greater at that period of time. It's been stolen from you, the knowledge of what we actually are and our history, much of it through Rome, through the Catholics, and Catholic Church. It's an entity, but it's not. It's just, it's people. You know, it's just a group of people that continue to, you know, enable this lie to go forward. But they would land and they would kill off not just the warriors, the strong ones, but the ones that had ability. You know, the most important ones. And so a lot of bloodlines were cut off because of that. You know, there were 3 Mayan books in existence now, but there was an entire library of information, and much of it, of course, with our capacities, you know. There's a reason why they can't figure out how some of those stone things were built, and that's because they didn't cut it with hands, and they had abilities that, well, people that chase power This is where I was going to go into the whole conversation about authority. So we'll just leave it right there. But they killed off the ones that would be called shamans, sorcerers, and they got people to hate those people. You're not like us. We want you to be like us, docile, and, we defanged like the rest of us. And that's what the slave system is. I mean, it's in front of you. I can and do in my mind imagine visually how this looks, and there's plenty of, comics and movies, and that you are serving. If you still have this mindset, deep down you know that you've been trained to hate. And you've been trained to hate that which actually serves you. You've been trained to look the other way from truth. That's what that movie, put the glasses on, because they have conditioned you to love your shackles. And let's go back to what authority is. So their premise is, from every person that wears a costume and associates themselves with this fictional thing that they call the government, but they say is real because they receive a paycheck, which is money that's created out of debt, which is now that being created by the same organization. It is crazy. And on some level, they still like to give it to you in the rear with this thing that they call taxation, which is just another form of theft. And more importantly, slavery, because that's what it is. Taxation is slavery, especially taxation on income. It's beyond. It's so blatantly obvious. How can you see otherwise? People that wear costumes and believe in this fictional entity that they call government, they say is real because other people also see this fictional entity in their minds that was programmed into them, right? They're conditioned to believe into this. And you could do this with any child. That's why so many believe in Santa, That's like pre-conditioning, getting them used to loving lies. And how dare you attack, But that's the thing. So I am a heretic. I'm a heretic, absolutely, 100,000% a heretic, because I have seen through their lies. I had this forced upon me. It traumatized my entire life. And I am a free human, and so I fight back, and I fight back with truth. I fight back by shining light at what isn't true. You get to see that. If you're honest with yourself, you have been a slave your entire life. But if there isn't a thing called government, if government doesn't actually exist, then what exists, right? Well, people do with this belief. They believe that there's actual lines drawn out defining what a nation is. It's all fictional. This earth is, you just walk places, you know, it's all fictional. It's only carried in your mind. You're carrying your own chains. You have the key. I'm showing you the key within yourself. Like, it's there. You could unlock that shackle and drop those chains. All you have to do is see and accept the truth. This is a slave world for those people that want to be slaves. Now, of course, these costume wearers can be quite violent. And they rationalize their violence by pointing back at these things, these spells that were created, and all the blood in the name of those things. And they say, I'm good because I'm continuing a tradition like my fathers who were also slaves. I'm continuing their slave tradition and passing their slave tradition on to my children. I feel good about this to myself. This is what they're saying. Wave this piece of patchwork, which represents basically East India Trade Company, wave this patchwork around and go die for it. These are all fictional things. Brand. It's a brand, you know. And that's what's on their mind. That's what's on their forehead, right? That's what the meaning of the mark is. Those who are marked, they carry this these chains, and all they have to do is just be truthful with themselves and then begin making the changes in your life to become true, authentic, sovereign beings. This is what you owe your children. You owe your children freedom, right? Liberation. You owe your children this. And for you to show them how to remove the programming that you gave them, because you helped give them those chains. You helped make them slaves. You have to help them free themselves. And the only way you can do that is by freeing yourself first. You have to start seeing the truth of the world around you. And then take responsibility. Be responsible for yourself. Well, now you're free. Now you realize your sovereignty. How does that look as a practiced life? I'm still figuring that out. I'm still figuring that out within Babylon, you know, which I am dependent on food still. I'm not hunting squirrels yet. Part of me wants to, you know, but I'm, you know, trying not to scare anybody, you know, not too badly. Although what I'm saying is huge. If you're really listening to this, This is monumental. This is epic. And especially if you're watching it for the first time. Like, really epic. So, here we are. Slave world. Authority. What does true authority look like? Well, let's look at their methods of control. We talked about violence a little bit. So they have several methods of control. First, of course, is with money. Since paychecks are sent out, and you got to eat, and that's how everybody is forced to use this currency. I mean, the mark was already always there, right? You can't go into any normal grocery store and barter for other food with food that you grew in your own garden or something. They won't even allow you to do that really at the farmers markets, right? They force you to use money. And so that's already always been there, right? That's part of the system of control, and people are very afraid of being in a position like I am currently in. Because what would they do? It's like, well, you don't just drop dead. And guess what? You can learn how to, become stronger and accept that those who ridicule you for not having any money they have a lot to learn. Okay? Leave it there for now. Violence is the method, though, that they ultimately use. The fear of it, of course. The fear of violence is how they control most of you. Like any sheep with, sharp teeth and loud barks and whatever will move the sheep, and that's what moves most of you. You're afraid of dying. You're afraid of being hurt. And so they do find the sociopaths that are willing to be violent. And there's, a select number of them in gangs, various types of gangs, and they offer them fancy and train them how to use fancy machines that can, multiply their ability to do violence, and tell them, because you're wearing this patchwork and you have the mark on your forehead, that you're doing what is the correct thing to be doing, and go spill blood in the name of this patchwork. Keep the slave tradition alive, pass it on to your son so they can go kill and be killed for this patchwork, and etc. The golden gooses, yeah. Oh, sorry, golden cow, yeah. Yeah, so they have the ability to act violently through basically leveraging slaves to do their violence for them. With machines, though. Always with machines. Nobody really uses swords. But even still, like, what they have is an army of the material, right? And as I've touched on, we don't live in a material world. The material world is an illusion of what is the basis of all realities, which is consciousness. And there are different levels of this illusion, of course. Different levels of what keep it alive, keep it running, keeping flowing. Basically, the machinery of this illusion, right? So we're here, let's just say this is 3D reality, right? Let's just call it that. And the material 3D reality has machines in it that are pretty sophisticated, for what these monkeys can build. But and networks, and just like ants, and there's sophistication in what this mimetic construct of government can do, right? And when I use that word mimetic, I mean that as the science of memes, which predates the word meme that you're aware of now. It's an actual social side path called memetics. But this meme of government, which is a fiction, doesn't actually exist. There's no thing that is a government. It's not the same as God, for example. I don't want to touch that argument. So they have the ability to, stop these vessels on the material realm. And the fear of that is what keeps slavery alive, of course. That's the basis of all authority on this planet, is violence. At least, when it comes to people declaring, or creating a fiction that declares sovereignty over land and all things and people. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. But that's what inhabits people's minds. Again, the symbology. What Babylon is, a mindset. And what I'm unlocking by fulfilling these prophecies is a way for you all to see how to symbolically and do the same, okay? So on one level, the big level, this whole thing is going to collapse. And internally, we all get to kind of play out some of the same things too. Those of us that can see through the slave system and see our own sovereignty get to finally release these evil spirits from our minds, right? These spells that have corrupted our thinking, that have blocked our way to our hearts, and have basically made it so that none of what we create in our lives is our own, because we're slaves. It's being stolen from us. All that which we should find enjoyment in our creation with our hands is taken. Okay? We had to really fight to try to get it back, and most